happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to the Dr. Laurie Davis Show. I'm Dr. Laurie Davis, and we're streaming live right now on E360 TV, Self-Worth the Missing Link Superstars Facebook page, and I have a superstar with me today, and also on our YouTube channel, and you just search Laurie Davis Show Host. So it's Monday, it's the beginning of the week, and I'm so happy and excited to have Patricia Crane with me, Dr. Patricia Crane. She and I talk the same language. So we're going to have a very fun day. Welcome to the show, Patricia.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be on it, Laurie.
Great. So just a little bit of information. I just love to start the show with the most recent thing that you've done. And why don't you pop up that latest book? Let's start with that. I like to start at the where we are now and then go back.
Thank you. Okay. My latest book is 11 Steps to Achieve Your Dreams. It's a little different from a lot of the how-to books out there because it starts with the inner work, not just go do it. You know, it starts with how you have to set the foundation to really get that inner work, loving yourself, of course, and just really being able to get that foundation set so that you can go out with confidence into whatever dream you have to help others.
Awesome. And you also have another book under your belt. You want to share that one?
I do. And this one has actually been out for 23 years now, 22 years. Ordering from the Cosmic Kitchen, The Essential Guide to Powerful, Nourishing Affirmations. So this one is all about how to use the power of affirmations. It's got dozens of them in there. And also the inner work as well, you know, looking at what do you need to release from the past? What kind of beliefs do you have that you grew up with that really aren't serving you, that you can let go of? And so that was a really fun book to write. That has stories that I'd been telling in my workshops for years and stories from other people that I've worked with and how affirmations changed their lives.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I just thought of somebody who would love to have that book. I'm just going to write her name down.
Okay.
I know somebody that would just get that right away.
Yeah.
And if we wanted to get your books, what's the best way to do that? Contact you directly, Amazon?
They're actually both on Amazon. And so that would be probably the easiest way to do it. They're both as ebooks. Ordering from the Cosmic Kitchen is also in audio. And I'm going to be recording the newest one very soon. So that'll be up in audio probably within a few weeks, a month or so.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And so if people want to contact you, which we'll be talking about a little later,
sure, as we get
into your work in the world, you know. Excellent. Beautiful. Well, this whole concept, let's just talk about one of our mentors that we have in common.
Okay, absolutely.
So why don't you share about Louise and the work that you do on behalf of her organization?
Over to you. Okay. Well, Louise Hay wrote she wrote her first book, Heal Your Body, which a lot of people have that connects your physical things with what might be going on, you know, spiritually, emotionally, etc. And that one got pretty popular. But in 1984, she wrote, You Can Heal Your Life. And I showed you this earlier. My original book is held together with a rubber band. I do have a newer one, of course, that I can read. But when I read this book, I'd been a very voracious reader already in the emotional, spiritual work and metaphysical work. But when I read Louise's book, I thought, you know, she brought together everything, mind, body, emotions, and spirit in a simple but profound way at the same time. And I felt like it was the best book I had ever read. And so, of course, I was interested in meeting her and had no idea how to do that. We didn't have the internet like it is today, at least. There was one, but it wasn't like this. And a couple of years later, I got a notice that somebody was speaking at a holistic breakfast meeting. And a friend called me and said, do you want to go to this? And I said, look, I don't get up that early for anybody because it's 6:30. You had to be at this breakfast meeting.
Oh, my.
You know, I know. And, you know, dressed coherent and everything. So I told her, I said, find out who's speaking. And she called me back. She said, Louise Hay. I said, I am there. I'm absolutely there. So it was a very exciting morning to hear Louise and more about her and just get her energy. She has a way of just sending out love that it was just amazing. You could just feel it. And so I talked to her afterwards and got on her mailing list. And she was at the time working a lot with people with AIDS. There was the AIDS crisis going on, and she had started a hayride in her living room with 8 guys that mushroomed into 800 people on a Wednesday night. And not only would they come, I know it was amazing, but they would bring their parents at times and their nurses and their doctors. And so it was quite a powerful meeting that she held. But at the time that I met her, she had been doing a 2-day workshop, which we still offer, the Love Yourself, Heal Your Life 2-day workshop, which takes people really on a very profound journey with her work. But she also was offering a 1-week intensive, the first one she'd ever done after I'd met her about 6 months later. So I went to that one and then the next one. And after that, she asked me to be on staff for the next 5. So those were amazing. And people from around the world coming together, with 100 to 150 people. That may sound kind of small right now, in terms of some of the gatherings. But at the time, when you think about it, that people were mainly just writing to Hay House and saying, what's happening, that she could gather that many people. So it was an amazing time. And I learned so much. I already knew about affirmations before I met Louise, but her whole concept about loving yourself and the inner child work and, really going deeply into the awareness about the old beliefs, that's what really transformed my life. So I am eternally grateful to her. And it just evolved into her offering a training program that I could be the head of. So I've been the head of her training program since 1995. And it's now spread with other trainers to, I think we have workshop leaders in about 70 countries now.
Wow.
Many, many other languages. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So, Louise's work was just so universally acceptable to people because it wasn't religious specifically. It was a philosophy that people could relate to divine wisdom and the greater energy that we're all a part of. And so the book was translated into, I think, about 33 different languages. It's sold over 55 million copies worldwide. And so people in all kinds of cultures, countries, ethnicities, etc., just found that they resonated with it. And I think that's amazing. So it's, not only just about loving yourself, but certainly overall loving everyone. And it's so much easier when you love yourself and you understand yourself that you can start loving others and feeling compassionate towards them and things that have happened and how they might behave, So,
Totally.
and I know you're a fan of Louise as well. You said your book kind
Yes.
of looked like mine too.
Yes, I'm on my 3rd copy. I actually introduced the book to all of my clients,
Wonderful. That's
and they go online and buy it. And every time I have a workshop or a retreat that I do, they are introduced to Louise. And
great.
one of my clients felt so sorry for me that mine was like together with a rubber band that the next time I saw her, she had purchased one for me to
Sweet.
replace my old one. I said, okay.
Hey. That's really
Now,
sweet.
I know. And living in Canada, I would not have maybe had the same opportunity as yourself at the time, to get trained in her work. But certainly it impacted and influenced the work that I do today, too. So
Wonderful.
mine is all about that, too, self-love. And I think we should talk about that for a few minutes because a lot of people hear that. It's important that we love ourselves, but they don't really have a system in place to do that.
Right.
So you do and I do, and it's like the how-to, because I don't remember my mom sitting me down and saying, now, if something bad really happens, here's how you still love yourself.
Right.
The
Yeah.
how-to wasn't there. So what are a couple of little tidbits you might share about what you share with people on how to love themselves?
Okay. Well, and Louise actually came up with a list. Initially, it was 10 ways to love yourself. And then it became 12. But someone in one of her groups said, we need to give people exactly what you're talking about. We need to give people more tips. So the very first one is to stop all criticism. That running thing that happens in your mind and you're talking to yourself and saying, you didn't do this right, you didn't do that right, what's not okay about your life here, how come you haven't lost the weight, all that stuff, to stop all criticism. And it's not easy to do that. In fact, Louise herself, she said one day that actually it was not just about criticizing herself, but just talking negatively. She started recording herself on phone calls. And she said when she had to realize that she had to stop criticizing herself or anybody else, she didn't have anything to say for 2 weeks. So just learning how to do that. So that's the first one. Another one is not to scare yourself, not to scare yourself about what could happen, to really be more focused in the moment and be willing to accept yourself just the way you are at the moment. And also know that you're going to be growing. We have a song that was written for Louise, actually. I love
Oh,
myself the way I am, and still I want to grow. But the beginning of it says, I love myself the way I am. There's nothing I need to change.
oh, I
Okay.
love that.
Nothing I need to change. And then it goes into loving the world. And then it goes into loving just in general other people, and finally back to yourself. So it's a beautiful song. I actually have that published on our YouTube channel, which is Heal Your Life Altogether. And that one's on there along with some audios of Louise on there and some other webinars that we've done and things like that. But not to scare yourself, to really be gentle with yourself. That's a really tough one as well. It's related to the criticism. Be gentle. And, if you make a mistake, okay, I made a mistake and I can change that in the future. So you're not dwelling on what you didn't do well. And I like to talk about the past and the future in this way. If you think about a wall on each side of you, the wall of the past is on the left and the wall of the future is on the right. And how much time do you spend thinking about the past or in negative terms and the future in negative terms? And then you don't have a whole lot of energy for where you are right now. So that's a big part of it as well. And then a really, really important piece of the work, which may not sound directly about loving yourself, but ultimately it really is. It's forgiveness.
Oh, yeah.
The forgiveness work can be so profound. And if it's difficult to forgive, we have an affirmation for that. I'm willing to forgive, not to say I know how to do it, just I'm willing even to be willing to forgive. And we know that Louise had a very abusive upbringing, as you know.
Mhm. Yes.
And she did the forgiveness work, and she found this philosophy that transformed her life. And she set an intention. I want to have as many people as possible know about this philosophy because it changed my life so much. She did not start out to say, hey, I want a worldwide publishing company. She started
No.
out just right, just to have that intention. And so the intention of just wanting to help others, took off in many different ways that she had never really expected. And so all those things are really important specifics in how to love yourself. But mainly as you go through, to also just be willing to be open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. Now, one of the things I've found in working with people on how to love themselves is when I work with women in kind of an abstract way, and even some of these specifics, they can get it. But when I talk about, okay, not only loving yourself, but loving your body.
Oh, big one.
Big one. Big one. I actually did a webinar on that one because it doesn't make it so abstract. It brings it down to something very specific. And I think so many women really do criticize themselves about the way they look, about their bodies, about their size. And that's a piece of loving yourself, is just to love the body that you're in, the vehicle that you're in this lifetime, to be out there and sharing, in whatever way you can, in whatever way is right for you. So that's a piece of it as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, when you were talking about the two doors,
Yeah.
you know how they'll say, I'm struggling with
Right.
anxiety or I'm
Right.
struggling with depression.
Right.
And what I decided to say was, well, depression is a state that you put yourself in because you're still worrying about the past.
Right.
You have regrets, you're sorry, you're remorseful.
Mm-hmm.
And anxiety is about worrying about the future that's not here yet.
Right.
So I'm envisioning those two doors. One has anxiety on it, one has depression on it.
Yeah, right. So, and I think there's really a good way to look at it. And there's really an important concept too that you're bringing up, Laurie, because sometimes people want to try it especially in the spiritual work, they want to try and deny some of the emotions, especially anger, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like, okay, acknowledging it and saying, okay, and exactly what you're talking about. What are the thoughts from the past that are creating the depression? You change your thinking, change your life. It's more complicated than that, obviously, on an emotional level. But, and what am I worried about in the future that isn't going to go well? And then what we do, of course, and I know you know this as well, then we start using affirmations to make those changes. I'm willing to love myself now. I'm willing to trust the future. In fact, this was actually put together after Louise passed away, her Trust Life book. We put
Oh,
this
wow.
it's called Trust Life. And it's Love Yourself Every Day with Wisdom from Louise Hay. And one of her authors from Hay House, Robert Holden, put this one together after she had passed with so much of her wisdom. And there's an
Nice.
affirmation and a saying for every single day of the year.
Nice.
And this
Oh,
is one of my very favorite ones. And I actually send out to our mailing list, I send out every Monday the 7 affirmations for that particular week. So that I would highly recommend, besides the You Can Heal Your Life book. And it's just so comforting, really, when you start working with affirmations, especially with Trust Life, to be able to say, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm going to do my affirmations, my intentions, whatever it is that you're working towards in your own life, personally and professionally. But at the same time, unexpected things happen. We talked about this a little earlier before the show, when COVID happened. And we had all kinds of plans that were in person for, our workshops and our trainings worldwide. And then, boom, we had to shift very quickly into a different mode. And so it helps you when you're trusting life to say, okay, I will adapt to this. I can adapt to this. I can work with this and make the changes I need to make, especially with the unexpected kinds of things that do happen. Right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, some of the little tips I give out are things I'll ask my clients. I actually created 4 little workshops called The Art of Loving Myself. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's really cute. And so I just ask questions. What do you absolutely love to do?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, do more of that. So if
Mm-hmm.
it's gardening, if it's sewing, if it's reading, for me, it's broadcasting. I'm passionate about broadcasting, so I find
Clearly.
every excuse I can to
Mm-hmm.
broadcast, and been doing that for many years. But just do whatever it is that you love to do, just do more of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then another little tip, I always say, when the you know what hits the fan, I go paint my toenails
Okay.
to get me into a different mindset. So
Right. Yes.
yeah, so yeah, it's all very good because
Mm-hmm.
people need to know the how to. And I'm working with a 13-year-old and his little sister, she's 7.
Wow.
And I worked with their parents before they ever had the children.
Mm-hmm.
Now, isn't this great? Next
Yeah.
generation coming up because the
Yes.
parents could see some things where they weren't loving who they were
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, even though they've got great parents and a great home. And they, they suspected some behaviors coming up. Well, the behaviors that were coming up were ones that I do not love myself.
Mm-hmm.
But because they had been tuned in years ago,
Mm-hmm.
they recognized it right away in their children. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, it is. It is. And how wonderful they have parents that are learning this to transmit it to their children, because we certainly didn't learn any of this
No,
growing up,
no, no.
not any of it. And I think it's fantastic when the parents are there and are able to change
Mhm.
things. It is. And for children to learn it, it's going
Oh,
to
yeah,
make a whole different world,
that's
really a
right.
whole different world. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful.
So, yes. Um, one of the parents, I think it was the dad, did a really cool thing with the son, though, and I'd never heard of this, and I learned from them.
Mhm.
Of course, like yourself, we're always learning. I
Always.
learn from my clients. So I think I'm all right to share this because I'm not saying who it is, but he asked his son to make a list of everything he loved. I love
Mm-hmm.
my family. I love it when we go out together. I love this. I love curling. I love, And then he said, okay, now on the other paper, I want you to make a list of some things that could tempt you, like drugs, smoking, alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
blah, blah, blah. He said, now hold up the two sheets. And he did. That's this beautiful technique. And he said, now, if you participate in the drugs, the alcohol, the smoking, the whatever, the bullying, all the things that you love will disappear. I thought that was brilliant.
That is brilliant. That is.
So
Yeah.
he said, you get to choose because that's where the power is in your ability
Mm-hmm.
to choose. So
Yeah,
which one do you want? And without hesitation, of course, he chose the right list.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Putting it into a contrast like that is amazing. That's really very
Isn't it?
powerful. Yeah, that's really powerful. And and you and I know too that so much has changed because of social media.
Yes.
And and especially I think for the girls, the young girls, because of all the comparisons that are on and the bullying that happens and everything.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so when you teach them to love themselves, it's kind of like inoculating them against all that other
It
stuff,
is. It
and being
is.
able to make, and also to be able to make different choices for who do you want to be with, who do you want to be friends with, and
Mhm.
things like that. So I mean, I remember the cliques growing up.
Oh, yes.
And I wasn't in any of the cliques. I
Me
was
either.
an outsider, right? So I can, relate on a different level. But I think it's so much more pervasive now that it's even more important for the work that you're doing with the teens, the young children, the parents, to really bring them into more of that understanding about themselves,
Mhm.
and really to understand that when other people are acting like that, it's about their insecurities, not
Mhm.
yours,
Mhm.
and to be able to understand and have some compassion. But you certainly, Marianne Williamson, I know you know who she is as
Yes.
well, and all her books and stuff. And I used to go to her lectures quite a bit many years ago, and I remember her saying, when you forgive someone, she says, it doesn't mean you have to go to lunch with them.
No.
So you
No.
don't need to have a relationship, or if you were brought up in an abusive home like Louise was, that you can choose whether or not to continue any kind of relationship with those people. You don't have to. You can make the choice to really honor yourself and your own needs, and loving yourself and what you do in the future, ongoing.
Mhm.
So there's just, it's really a lot. Again, Louise's book is simple and yet so profound. And I was talking to somebody just the other day who had done her signature 2-day workshop with someone in Canada, actually, and said, she was amazed at how much more she learned about herself, just being able to go beyond reading the book into some more experiential work, basically. And so we hear that all the time because, like you said, there's always more to learn. We're always on a learning curve. And if we can honor that and not
Mhm.
say, oh, I know that, or I heard that, or I figured that out years ago, and just say, you might be able to hear it from a different perspective now, and
Totally.
go a little deeper. There's always more to release. There's always more to become aware of.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I have a good example of that. One of my clients, we have this 40 workshops in the series 40,
Hmm.
and it's called Core Empowerment Workshop Series. And she took the first, it takes like a year, like because we only
Wow.
meet an hour a week, right? So,
Wow.
yeah, so it's a 1 year commitment, but I've had lots and lots of people graduate that. But she took that, and then about 3 years later, I get a phone call from her and she wants to take it again. And I
Mhm.
said, okay. Well, she said, I'm going to take it again because I'm not the same person now that I was 3 years ago. And I'm
Mhm.
not going to probably even put down the same answers.
Right. Yes.
And then she came back 3 years later and took it again.
Again.
And each time the workbook answers were different.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
she said, when I looked back at the first one, I couldn't believe that that was actually me that wrote that crap. Yeah.
Oh, well, and that's a great example of just continuing to learn. And I know, even Louise, she did a YouTube video actually on tapping with Nick Ortner, and she uncovered something. from her childhood in the process of doing the tapping with him.
Oh,
And
wow.
it surprised even her. She actually had some tears.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And so, it's like being able to understand that unconscious mind, we all have the iceberg image of all that's underneath the surface. But being able to be aware that there is so much in the unconscious mind, and we can just keep learning something and releasing something, becoming more aware of something that we need to change. And so that's a gift. That's a real gift in our lives to be able to do that. And I
Mhm.
do know people have done the Louise's signature workshop a number of times, or even the trainings, and said, how much more they got into the depth of things and realized what else they needed to release. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm realizing even now at this late stage, um, there's more to go.
Yeah.
It's like house cleaning. There's always a cupboard
Right.
drawer
More.
to clean out,
Always
right?
more.
There's always a
Yeah,
closet that you need to
yeah.
redo. And so I'm constantly redoing Lori. I mean, that's just
Hmm.
inevitable. I mean,
Yeah.
I embrace it because at one time I would have been afraid of change,
Mm-hmm.
or I wouldn't want somebody to know something,
Hmm.
or the shame that I carried around certain things that happened for me.
Hmm.
And so that shame starts to become like a big suitcase with about 300 pounds of rocks in it, I think.
Right. Yeah.
And you're carrying it everywhere.
You're carrying it, and then it limits your energy for doing all the other things in the
Mhm.
world that you could be doing,
I know.
because each one of us has a special place to be and to share and to, inspire others. And so getting rid of all that stuff as ongoing is what
Yes.
allows you to just be more and more powerful in the world. And I know we look at 5 different areas: prosperity, relationships, health, career, and also obviously the foundation of loving yourself. And
Mhm.
my other foundation, as I've mentioned to you, is meditation. I really found that transformed my life because I was such an anxious person. I was trying to be a perfectionist all the time, which doesn't work.
Right.
And this very dear friend of mine came to me and said, I really think you need to start meditating. You need some help. And so I did. And that really changed my life a lot. So we teach a lot too about meditation.
Mhm.
But those 4 areas that I mentioned, prosperity is an interesting one because that one is top of almost everybody's list. And Louise once said it was easier for her to teach a class on sexuality than prosperity, because when people got their buttons and their beliefs pushed on prosperity, that they just got really stuck overall. And she's got a great program called Releasing Prosperity that she did, no, Receiving Prosperity, that she did in front of a live audience, and answered questions and everything. We have that audio on our YouTube channel. And there's also a movie that, there's actually, they took the video as well. But we work with a lot of people who have that issue. And, it all goes back to those beliefs in childhood that you were taught up to believe there's not enough, rich people aren't nice, you have to work hard and you can't even get ahead, barely making it, just all those, you can't have things. When I grew up, my parents were comfortable, but the belief was definitely you can have nice things, but not what you really want because they're always too expensive. And so my mother was always settling for a couch that was okay, but not what she really wanted. And even later in her life, she wanted a certain car and she wouldn't allow herself to buy it, because even though she had the money, because it was too good, it was too good. And so all those beliefs are just buried in there. And relationships too. Oh my goodness, what all the beliefs that we have about relationships, right?
Yes.
Watching our parents and experiencing them and things like that. So there's just so much that you can uncover and transform. And there's a lot of work out there for sure in different ways, and people learn in different ways. And the way that I really transformed the most was from Louise's work and some related philosophy workshops and things like that. So I think that Laurie, we're at a wonderful time in life. We were talking earlier about how years ago, you would have to go into a bookstore over in the dark corner to try and find something on self-help. And now there are huge sections on self-help in the bookstores and online, of course. So, we're in a very fortunate period of time, I think, for really that learning and that philosophy and just the understanding psychologically of ourselves that can transform things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally. Yes, I feel really blessed. And when you talked about relationships, I've been married 3 times. By
Mm-hmm.
the time I was 42, I was into my 3rd relationship, my 3rd marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I knew I had a communication problem. And that's how
Mm.
I knew that my
Wow.
self-worth wasn't intact because of whom
Mm-hmm.
I attracted
Mm-hmm.
in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to take a hard, hard look at Laurie saying,
Yeah.
okay, wait a minute here. There's something not right here.
Mm-hmm.
So I was blessed to have met my husband, and he actually, Ron Davis, he actually helped us build our business. And we've been in business now 32 years doing our work.
Wonderful.
hmm
Oh,
And he
that's
did
phenomenal.
published all my workbooks and things like that. So it's been a really labor of love, and not
Mhm.
without its trials, of course, but
Yeah.
the more work you do, the easier life becomes. I think I put a post up on Facebook the other day: when you can surrender being offended and give up on unrealistic expectations
Yes.
and detach yourself from outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
life's pretty blissful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And especially releasing expectations, absolutely, in your relationships, I think
Oh,
that's truly a huge, huge one, etc. I'm married to my second husband, and my first husband was a wonderful man. In many ways, we had a great relationship, but we were going in very different paths. I was very much into the spiritual work and the work with Louise. It wasn't his interest, and he was on a different path in terms of his career and things like that. So when we divorced, overall, it was amiable, and we're still friends. He's met my new husband, I've met his new wife, and we communicate with each other a few times a year. So that's been really nice. But I have to say that I was a little arrogant when I got that first divorce, because I just thought I knew it all about relationships, and I was ready for my soulmate, right? And somewhere in the universe, it was like, Patricia, no, you,
no.
you have a lot more to learn. So it was 7 years before I met my current
Mhm.
husband, and I write about this in my book, and I don't necessarily recommend this particular way of things happening, but I'll share this with you. Um, so I had made a list. You know how they say, oh, make a whole list of all the people that, all the things you want in a relationship. And I had made this huge long list, and I met this guy who had a lot of them, and we had no chemistry whatsoever. There was nothing there. So I threw out the list, and I said, okay, what's really important? What's really important to me is that the man I'm with is on the spiritual path and is passionate about it as I am, that he has a good sense of humor, because I think that's really important, and that he's a good communicator, and then just some other kind of general overall. But there were only like 4 or 5 things that I wrote down, right? And so I'm in the bookstore at the Center for what is now the Center for Spiritual Living, getting some things for an England trip I was going on. I was having some assistance, and I had some angel pins that I wanted to get for them. And the guy who was at the counter, his name was Rick. And I thought, gee, when I left, we had a nice conversation. I thought, oh, what a nice guy, right? Anyway, not too long later, when I got back from the program that I was doing in England, and I was doing a workshop at the church, he was helping, and I again thought, oh, what a nice guy, and stuff. And then he asked me out if I'd like to go, meet for coffee, just something real casual and stuff. And I said, yeah, that would be fine. But before that happened, the workshop, he was introducing me on stage at the church. And I walked in and I sat down, and something inside said, he's the one. And this was only the second time I ever even saw him. And so we started going out very casually. And I find out that he's been without a job for 3 years. He has no money, no job. And he's living in the home of the people who owned the book or had the bookstore at the church, because he doesn't have any money. So I'm really doubting this whole issue that he's the one, right? But a lot of things happened, and I really got the message that he is. And it has done what you were just talking about. It's evolved into us having heart inspired presentations together. And he has really been a huge support in terms of building the business. So some of my friends were, of course, very concerned that I was with this guy who had no money and no job. But it turned out that I followed my heart and what spirit told me. And the other thing that was really amazing was when we met, in Louise's book, how it has the affirmations in the beginning of each chapter. He had memorized those before he would go on to the next chapter.
Oh, wow.
So he had read Louise's book, loved her book, was doing all the exercises, even the mirror work.
Oh, wow.
And, so when I say that in workshops, I say, I don't necessarily recommend that you go looking for somebody who has no job and no money, but in this case, it was the guidance that I had that really worked out. And we did, we had some little places where I like to say, when you have a relationship, you rub up against each other like stones, and you can either wear them down and make them smooth, or you can let them still be rough. And when you wear them down, let them be smooth, then you're smoothing out the relationship. And so that's definitely what happened with that. We've been together 28 years now. Mm-hmm. So it's been, quite an amazing thing to have, again, that partner that I was envisioning to work with. That was one of my really deep desires as I came along on my career path. And so it's been quite amazing.
Yes, that's great. Well, we've been together 32 years, so similar journey. But after the second marriage failed, I went home to visit my parents, and I said, okay, I'm done. I am so done with men. I am financially and emotionally bankrupt. I can't do this anymore. And I'm just going to dive into my career. Well, I said that. And then 3 weeks later, I walk into work, and this young friend of mine in there was crying in the back room. We worked in a clothing store, and I was doing clothing workshops at the time, teaching women how to dress professionally and all that. So, and I used this store for my clothes. And so I went in, and she was crying in the back. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "It's Dad. It's my dad." I said, "What's wrong? Is he sick?" No, Mom left, and she's been cheating, and oh, he's so quiet and shy. He's never going to meet anybody. I said, "Oh, I've been there, done that. Give my card. Tell him I'm not interested in him. But I will find somebody, because I have lots of beautiful girlfriends looking for a good man, and he can come out with us on a Saturday. We're going out for the afternoon." Well, she said, "I don't think he'll go." And I said, "Well, that's not my problem." Anyway, we made the appointment. I said, "Park your vehicle in my yard. We will take the ferry across the harbor, because parking downtown is difficult." And he landed at the door, Patricia. One look at him, and I went, "Come on in." Because I am definitely not going to give you to some girlfriend. And if you met him today, he'd say to you, "I'm still waiting to meet those women that she promised." But now here's the clicker. I had to backpedal with my parents. So I wrote them a letter and said I had met this beautiful guy, family man, responsible, worked in the aircraft industry, was working. And anyway, I 3 dates later, he moved in with me, and we've been together ever since. 3 dates.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I understand that.
Yeah,
I understand that.
Because when it's right, it's right.
Right. Yeah.
And your guts and your intuition and everything will tell you.
Yeah.
So my dad passed away in 2016, and my mom had a little box of personal effects that she gave me. And in that box was the letter I had written.
Oh my goodness.
I said, "Dad kept this letter?" He said, "Yes, because every once in a while, when he felt like having a little chuckle, he would pull it out and read it."
Oh, how funny. How funny. But what you're saying too is clearly your intuition was just right on.
Oh yeah, and I listened to it.
it was absolutely right on, exactly what I did as well, same thing. And yeah,
Yeah.
Rick moved in with me pretty quickly as well. Some of
Mhm.
my women friends were quite
Oh,
worried about me because of his jobless situation.
right.
But what I did know is that he had worked for AT&T for 20 years
Oh, wow.
and been very, very responsible, and moved way up in the company, to have his own, conference center and stuff for AT&T and training and everything. And what I saw is that he had a lot of courage, a lot more courage than many people would have, to say, look, I need to work on myself. I need to understand what has been going on in my life, because he had a very rough childhood as well, which is one of the reasons he related to Louise's book. But, he was looking at what happened in his relationships and some things that he believed. And he said, I'm just going to take the time to understand myself. So he had those 3 years of growth, and we probably wouldn't have even liked each other if we had met before that. But by the time he had done all that inner work, he was ready for a relationship, and so was I. And in
Yeah.
fact, he did a very long, beautiful affirmation that he shares, a series of affirmations, about his life and what it would look like. And it didn't actually include a relationship. So we sometimes laugh because I said, well, the universe really has a sense of humor because it came through us getting together. But he's really, I think, a wonderful inspiration, especially for other men who have trouble really going to, there are things that I need to change. And he was willing to do that and had a lot of courage to do that. So I'm just delighted that you met your guy. And
Mhm.
so did I. Yeah.
Yep, and he's been through all our workshops and, was very open. He
Mhm.
only worked another year in the aircraft industry and then retired on our letterhead
Mm,
and came
okay.
and we worked together for the last 30
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And, but congratulations to Rick also, because for men to take on the work. But you know what I
Mhm.
found when I embraced the voice technology in 2002?
Mhm.
That's when I started attracting men to our workshops
Oh,
because
okay.
there was no camera. So the anonymity was there.
Mm.
So if they
Mhm.
had to have a little breakdown or the tears came to their eyes, they didn't have to sit there in front of 5 or 6 or a room full of people
Right. Yeah.
and share that.
Mm.
So that's when I started attracting a lot of men. A lot of my
Mm.
clients are men,
Yeah.
males,
Oh,
and,
that's wonderful.
they kinda
Good.
get they're straight shooters, so they wanna get the work done, and they want to move on, and you know, um, I love the way that they think and that
Mhm.
how I work with them.
Yeah.
So I've worked with athletes and people who wanted to, high performance people who want to,
Mhm.
especially guys,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of damage in that industry too,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
There
so.
is. Well, and I think that, because of Louise's background, so many women who have had difficult upbringings and had abuse are really attracted to it. And we do find in our training programs, there's usually about 10% men. So there is a
Yeah.
much smaller number, of men in those programs. And we do have a Heal Your Life training trainer in Canada, Victoria Johnson, who's wonderful. She's got a program in Banff next April, and I'm actually doing a webinar with her in a couple days. But where you're going to be surprised possibly by this, the place where we have the largest percentage of men coming into the workshops and then sometimes into the trainings is India.
Wow.
And that really
That
surprised
shocks
me.
me.
That really surprised us as well, because we started seeing on Facebook people were publishing, pictures of their groups that were coming to the trainings, and I got in touch with a couple of the people over there and said, you know, we don't expect this. I mean, you have up to 40, sometimes even 50% men. And they said that they felt like it was more because the men were more open to spirituality, not necessarily personal growth per se.
Gotcha.
But it really has been a surprise in that culture that their percentages of men coming into the programs are higher than other countries.
Mhm.
You know,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Well, I have a very nice male, now business partner of mine. He lives in Southern California, and, his whole career, 40 years, has been in finance. He
Hmm.
probably has every financial credential. I know he does, that you can actually access and get
Mhm.
in the United States of America.
Mhm.
And when you mentioned prosperity
Mhm.
earlier, this past year, he and I developed 100 workshops. And I do the soft side, the empowerment side, the belief
Mm.
side. He does the hardcore financial side, teaching people how to manage their own portfolios.
Right.
And we called it 100 Shades of Prosperity.
Great. Actually, I heard him on a couple of the shows that you had.
Yes, he
Because he's been on.
broadcasts with me every Tuesday. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I listened to a couple of those, so that's
Yeah.
great. And that's what people really need, that practical information. And I think women are becoming more savvy about that. We have
Yes.
somebody in a different networking group here in Lake Arrowhead, and it's all about how to handle money, especially for women. But my dad left my mom after 31 years of marriage, and she suddenly had
Oh,
to. Yeah, she suddenly had to go back to work. She had been a stay-at-home mom for all those years, except for the first few years, because my dad was drafted, during World War II, and so she was working during that time. But as soon as he came home, I was conceived, and that changed, the trajectory. And that's what the life for women was at that time. You were a housewife,
that's
and
right.
she loved her role as a mom. I mean, she was very happy with that. But my dad left her after 31 years of marriage, and she did have some financial knowledge because she had been trained as an accountant, but still, that threw her into a whole new world that she wasn't prepared for. And especially to go back to work at age 54, after all those years of not working. And fortunately, she's a very bright woman, and she did find a pretty nice job for those next years until she retired. But it's so important for women to really learn more about finances and how to take care of themselves and how to be independent as well.
The largest poverty group in Canada
Hmm.
is women over 50.
Doesn't surprise me.
Isn't that
Yeah.
something?
Yeah, sad. Yeah.
So when I started talking to Ramin about that, he said, well, that needs to be addressed.
Hmm.
So anyway, between the two of us, we created, well, I already had 40 workshops in finance anyway, but
Hmm.
we, yeah, we pursued that. So yeah,
That's
so
great. Yeah.
yeah, it was fun. It's a fun project.
So, and probably you and I had possibly a similar situation where, as a woman, you couldn't get a credit card.
Oh no,
You couldn't get a credit card.
you couldn't
And
get a
the only,
mortgage either.
or a mortgage, right? And the only reason I was able to get a credit card is somebody made a mistake and thought my name was Patrick.
Oh,
And when I was in college, my senior year in college, I got a Shell credit card, Shell oil, gas credit
yeah.
card to Patrick Crane.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I kept that for a long time, but that was why I got it, because I couldn't have gotten that at that point.
Right.
So I mean, we look at things and how much has changed, and
Oh,
the opportunities for women, and the Global Society for Female Entrepreneurs is so wonderful for supporting women, in their dreams and what they can go out and accomplish. And at the same time, I feel like there's even more pressure on women because they still are having more responsibilities at home and usually for the children and things like that. Now I'm seeing more and more men doing their shopping, which I think is great,
yes.
and, and and you can always tell that they haven't been doing it long because they're standing at one of the shelves looking like, is this the right thing? So it seems like I'm often saying to men in the grocery store where we have up here in Lake Arrowhead, can I help you find something? Just
Yes.
in case they need help. But I think, and some men are adapting more to that and others aren't. So I think for women, it's challenging. And when I was speaking at the Oceanside group recently, I talked about even just taking a few breaks during the day to let your shoulders and your neck and your back just relax, and taking some nice deep breaths and just allowing yourself to relax even for a few minutes, can really help you to release some of the stress and then focus on just knowing that you've got this and you can handle whatever's going on, and that you're loving yourself, and taking care of yourself.
Absolutely.
So that
Well,
whole
I
issue,
often use the, oh, I'm sorry. Were you
well, I was
done?
just going to say that whole issue of self-care for women,
Oh,
and
yes.
and it goes beyond. A bubble bath is great, but it's also a mindset and an emotional set of saying, I also deserve to take care of myself. Yeah.
Well, and you've probably used the same analogy. If we don't, then
Right.
who is going to take care of our family?
Right. Yeah.
Right? We can't keep giving out of empty cups. It's just not going to
Mm-hmm.
work.
Mm-hmm.
I always say if you don't have any groceries in your cupboard, you can't give any to your neighbor.
That's true.
Things like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
but we were conditioned to think that, to be submissive and to serve and
Mm-hmm.
take care of our man. And this was, all part of the growing up in the 50s and 60s. You just didn't, and the word selfish, you're being selfish
Mm-hmm.
rather than self-care. So the vocabulary, even changing the vocabulary,
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
so important, right?
Right. And, initially the whole concept of loving yourself, when Louise was coming out with that so strongly, it might have been around a few places, but now it's become much more mainstream. And
Yes.
I think that that is really good. And yet, I think also people need to understand what loving yourself means. And it doesn't mean that your opinion is the only one in the world. And
Mm-mm.
I'm seeing some of that out there as well, that it's only my belief or my opinion that works. And it's not. It's really,
No.
loving yourself is going to be compassionate about others as well, loving them too, and being able to acknowledge that and have good conversations about things so that you're open to the other person's point of view and they're hopefully open to yours as well.
Absolutely. Well, I always share, I'm just one little cog in the big wheel of
Mm-hmm.
healing.
Right.
I just do one small piece of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always encouraging people to. And that's why I wanted to do this recovery summit,
Mm.
uh, because the speakers will spend the first 15 minutes talking about their situation they were in.
Mm.
And then the
Okay.
next 15 minutes, what did you do to get out of there?
Right.
What
Yes.
modalities did you use? What books did you read? And then
Mm-hmm.
the last 15 minutes, where are you today? And
Mm-hmm.
what are you up to today? And if you have books to promote or whatever, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of my purposes in doing that was a lot of clients who, when you're in those crises or trauma, you can't see the end of the tunnel.
Right.
You're
Yes.
in a dark place. And so the light is there, but so the success stories are what I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
promote. And
Oh,
I have
great.
you on my hit list because we're going to do 4 a year.
Oh, great. Well, and
Yeah.
I'm really excited to hear about it because I want to join in the one that you're
Yes,
doing coming
that'd
up.
be
I think
awesome.
that's great.
Mhm.
And some of the work that I'm doing now is along the same lines. I'm writing another book that's about the courage to
Oh,
do
great.
the personal growth work. And I'm interviewing people like you're talking about that really struggled and went through addictions and needed a lot of recovery work and how they came out of it, how they moved
Absolutely.
out of it. So
Yeah.
perfect. I'm really
Awesome.
excited. I'm really excited to listen to your summit.
Perfect. I'll give you the info as soon as we're done here. We have a couple of minutes, so I would just like to ask you to, in a minute or two, just share words of encouragement with anybody out there who needs to know how to love themselves.
Yeah. What I would say, first of all, is just know that you're okay the way you are right now and you want to grow. And to just be open to what comes to you. Because what will happen when you set an intention that says, I want to grow, the teacher will show up, the people will show up, the book will show up. I can't tell you how many people had Louise's book fall off almost on their head in a bookstore because that's what they were ready for. So, be open and know that your life can change if there are a lot of struggles in it right now, and that you were meant to be the magnificent human being that you were put on this earth to be. And there's a lot of help available for you, in every way. Not people, books, all kinds of modalities, all the things on the internet, that you can do and see that are positive. We have a wonderful YouTube channel, Heal Your Life, that you can look at. And just know that that help is available to you and that you are a magnificent being, and just be willing to embrace that and move along the path into more of that for yourself.
Well said.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Patricia, for being with us today. I've enjoyed our conversation. I shared with Patricia, I don't do interviews anymore. I just have meaningful
Which is
conversations.
perfect. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been delightful, and I've loved learning more about you because I'm pretty new to the female in the group. So I'm really
Oh,
excited about it.
perfect. Well, thank you for joining.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Laurie Davis. You've been listening to our show or watching our show today. Please remember that the shows are archived and you can go into E360 TV and all of our episodes are in there. Our YouTube channel, just search Laurie Davis Show Host, and also streaming live right now on Self Worth the Missing Link Superstars Facebook page. I'll be back tomorrow with my co-host Ramin Modiri, and of course on Tuesdays it's all about finance and prosperity. So that's once a week, and he always comes up with really terrific topics. Last week he talked about how mini skirts and the stock market are connected, and he shared that the length of our skirts actually there's ways to determine how the economy is going based on a woman's skirt length. It was pretty fascinating. He's a fascinating guy. So
Sounds like it.
we'll be back live tomorrow. So thank you everyone for being here, and especially you, Patricia. It's
Thank
been
you.
my pleasure. Mhm.
Thanks. Bye bye.
We'll wave bye to everybody and talk later.